Hello and welcome. This is Cece from Wellbuilt Solutions, and in this video, we'll be going over how to create a custom report for growth rate by year quarter. All right, go into Workday and type in Create Custom Report. You're gonna have three inputs on this screen. As always, we're gonna put the report name, growth rate by year quarter. We're gonna select the report type of matrix, and we're going to choose the data source of trended workers. On the next screen, you're going to select the data source filter of trended workers for all organizations. This is going to include some organization prompts so that should your end user choose, they could pare down the data if they wanted to. They wouldn't just be boiling the ocean for all of the employees and the data within Workday. All right, so the first group by field we're going to do is a format date calculated field for record date. And it's going to look something like this. So you'll do create calc field. You're going to choose the business object of trended workers. You're going to use your proper calc field nomenclature, and then you're going to say record date, and then in parentheses, show what that format is, what they can be expected from this particular field. So we'll say record date, and then I chose year quarter. All right, jumping back to the custom report, we've put it in here in this slot, and then we've done a label override of year quarter, so we don't have to look at that calc field nomenclature. Now, scrolling to the bottom, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. In the last custom report, we showed how we can add a sum with an ending head count. Now we're going to create a summarization calculation that's a little different. So add a line item, and you can go ahead and add some ending head count here if you'd like, and then add another line item and switch out that summarization type to be calculation. Then in the summarization field, you're going to click into the empty value. You'll say create, and then the pathway will lead on to create system-wide summarization calculation. Click that. All right, awesome. Once you're at that page, you're going to name that summarization calc starting head count, and you're going to choose the function of lookup prior value. Then go down and click prior rollup period, choose summarization type of sum. Again, choose that ending head count, say period offset 1, and then return 0 on error. So here's what we're doing. You may have guessed this. If you remember, trended workers is only taking a headcount snapshot at the end of every month. If we're going to find the growth rate, the calculation is ending headcount minus starting headcount over divided by starting headcount. Every ending headcount of 1 month is the starting headcount of the next month. And so this prior roll-up period is allowing us to offset the ending headcount by 1 month. So we're in March right now. We're coming up at the end of March. The ending headcount at the end of March is technically also the starting headcount of April. And so we're just telling Workday, hey, no worries. We know you're only taking the ending headcount. Let's just do a prior roll-up period offset and call it the starting headcount. So that's what we're doing within this system-wide summarization calc, and this will come in handy. All right, so once you've created that, you should have calculation starting headcount right here. And then, of course, you can have the delivered sum of ending headcount, which we've, again, retitled so that we don't have to see the funny way that Workday names these fields. And then we're going to go through the same process. We'll do another line item. We'll say calculation, and we'll click into create system-wide summarization calc. And now we can do growth rate. And so we're going to create this one a little more complex, where we're going to be using both the values in one mathematical calculation. All right, so instead of lookup prior value, we're going to click summarization calculation as the function this time. And then scrolling down, we'll keep the default field type as numeric. We will also check the box for return 0 on error. That's best practice. And you'll add 3 line items. So we'll do just exactly what we called the growth rate. We'll say sum of ending headcount subtract, calculation that we just made of starting headcount, and then close that off with parentheses. We want that to happen first. And then we want to divide that value by calculation starting headcount. And there we have our growth rate. Brilliant. All right, let's bump back. Okay, so now we've got our group by field and we've got our 3 line items for starting headcount, ending headcount, and then our growth rate, which is that mathematical equation that's pulling those both together. Let's get a little crazy. Go to the prompts tab and check the box for populate undefined prompts. You'll see organization, include subordinate organizations. You'll see time series start date, time series end date. Those are the ones that we're most interested in for this custom report. All right. So your end user will be able to enter the organization level they're interested in, but I like to specify default value for include subordinate orgs so they don't have to take that extra click. Reorder the start and end date so that it goes in chronological order. I don't know why, but Workday likes to put the end date first, so just flip that around for your ease. And then do the default type of determine default value at runtime on both of those date parameters. I like to put in dynamic dates. That way, it is moving as a time frame with the report runner, and they don't have to manually input the dates of interest. They have a suggestion right off the bat that they can edit if they so choose. So the first one, I like to say, since we're doing this by quarter, I like to say first day of the calendar quarter from 1 year ago. This is a global dynamic field. On the time series end date, I like to say the last day of last calendar quarter. Okay. Scrolling down, I've said employee type of regular. And then because we're only looking at a mix of ending headcount and beginning headcount, both of those are technically snapshots. We're not looking at any sort of activity. So I just said specify default value snapshot. And I'm selecting do not prompt at runtime on all these variables because I don't need the end user to see any of this noise as it's irrelevant to them. All right, awesome. Jump over to the output tab. Change this output type to chart and table, and then go ahead and expand this chart options section. You're going to specify the horizontal axis as the row grouping. And if you remember correctly, the row grouping was our year quarter. So that will be along the x-axis. We're going to see the time going from left to right in chronological order. Ooh, what a big word. And then under the legend, you're going to select metrics. And metrics to include, I like to include metric 1 and metric 3 in this first axis, this primary axis. And then next, you're going to do add a secondary axis. Oops. All right, on the output tab, you're going to select the output type of chart and table. And we're going to get really fancy. We're going to have 2 axes. So the first axis you're going to say is a chart type of a line. And then we're going to choose row grouping as our horizontal axis. Horizontal axis, if you remember, our row grouping is our year quarter. And so that's going to be along the x-axis, and that'll be common among both. We're going to have 2 different y-axes, but we're going to have 1 x-axis of the year quarter. And we'll be able to see year quarter move along in chronological order as our ending headcount and our growth rate changes. Is trended. Scrolling down, let's go ahead and say include metric 3. Now this is our growth rate. If we go back to the matrix tab, we can see the metrics that go in order. This is metric 1, this is metric 2, this is metric 3. So we're specifying that we want to see that growth rate again as a percentage on this first primary axis. The reason we're choosing this as the primary is because we want the line of growth rate to fall on top of, be layered over that ending headcount. And so we'll say checkbox to yes, add a secondary axis, and then we'll choose our metric 2, which is our ending headcount, and we'll make that a column clustered. That way, in the final result, we'll see that year quarter on the horizontal axis. We'll see the ending head count hopefully going up if you're growing um, through for each quarter. And then you'll see the growth rate as a line on top of that column clustered ending head count. All right. And in this case, we don't need to select a top end value. You could go into advanced and decide to add a couple other tidbits, I guess, or nice to haves on the chart. The horizontal axis, you can actually title it quarter, year, quarter, whatever it makes sense to you. And growth rate, and I like to put the format of the growth rate. So on that first tab, we had set it to 0.00%. And then that secondary vertical axis title is our ending head count. And we've also checked show marker so that the line for growth rate, you can actually see the marker on top of the ending head count. All right. And then lastly, you can jump to the share tab and share this custom report with whoever should be an end user that gets to run it. Just make sure that the proper security groups have access on the trended workers security domain. All right, let me know how it goes creating this custom report and what edits you might have. Thanks so much.